Welcome to What the World is Watching. Here's your host, John Andoska.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited that the weekend's here. We're just a little bit more than a week out from the Royal Rumble, and this is such an exciting time. As a wrestling fan, every time this year, it's awesome. I love gearing up for the Rumble. I love, this time as we kind of get on the road to WrestleMania, as they say. And, one of my favorite things to do at this time, too, before we have a big event coming up, like the Rumble or even like Survivor Series or anything like that, is to go back and watch some of those favorite moments and everything on the network. So, that's one of the great things we'll be talking about a little bit later on. But first, I have on as a guest here my fiance, and what's interesting about her is not only is she my fiance, but that she didn't really grow up as a wrestling fan, and hasn't really gotten into it until we got together a couple of years ago. So to get her take on some of the things that I've made her watch in the time that we've had the network which has been out for about a year now. I think that's kind of crazy. But there have been many times where we have not watched some of her favorite shows, or we've turned off different things, maybe her shows on Bravo that she watches, or the Blacklist or any of those kind of things, and instead we've turned on old Clash of Champions, or we've turned on Saturday Night's Main Event, we've turned on some ECW pay-per-views and things like that. So I wanted to bring her on to get her perspective, a female perspective, not only that, but somebody again who's not necessarily a lifelong fan, and somebody who's kind of a casual fan, and what kind of things that she likes on the network. And oddly enough, one of the things is that she's liked the most is the documentaries. And I think that for a lot of fans who are casual and maybe don't know the stories behind things, I think that that's the best thing, maybe to start them on, is to get them interested, because a lot of the stuff from the Monday Night War, for instance, really piqued her interest in wanting to see different things. And I love, my favorite thing when we're sitting and we're watching this stuff, especially the Monday Night War stuff, is when she says, "Oh, was that real?" It's even, even to this day, like some of the stuff that happened, still suspends, our disbelief. So that's really cool to see. Again, it's really cool to see through the eyes of somebody else, and especially through the eyes of somebody that you love. But anyway, that'll be coming up a little bit later on. But first, I want to talk about promo theater, which is one of everybody's favorite segments. Last week we had the Kane Dewey promo in the style of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And this week is something a little different. It's something a little crazier. It's something a little bit off the beaten path, and it is the Ultimate Warrior nosedive promo from WrestleMania 6, before WrestleMania 6 actually, and it's done in the style of Christopher Walken. So if you can imagine, again, the nosedive promo, if you take it for what it is, it's, for anybody who doesn't know, I encourage you to look it up on YouTube. It's where Ultimate Warrior pretty much talks about Hulk Hogan taking the plane, and I don't even know what it's about. Just listen to it. You'll hear Christopher Walken, or somebody at least that sounds like him, in a second here, saying the exact words of the promo in his style. So you'll at least get a sense of how crazy this is from that. So then if you go back and watch the Warrior version or listen to it, it's one of those things that is so classic. It's so great. It's one of the big reasons, why everybody missed the Warrior, for so many years. And again, we're sad when he passed away last year, but it's one of my all-time favorites. So I'm going to stop wasting time and rambling about it. So here it is. This is Ultimate Warrior's nosedive in the style of Christopher Walken, and we'll be right back with my fiance Abby right after this promo.
Hey, Hulk Hogan, I have a question. To answer your question, is you, Hulk Hogan, traveled to WrestleMania by conventional means. The normals you travel with experience malfunctions. As you realize, all that is left is total self-destruction. Do you, Hulk Hogan, show self-pity? Do you, Hulk Hogan, try to reason why? Do you, Hulk Hogan, try to comfort the normals that have even more fear than you? Or do you, Hulk Hogan, kick the doors out, kick the cockpit door down, take the two pilots that have already made the sacrifice so you can face this challenge? Dispose of them, Hulk Hogan. Assume the controls, Hulk Hogan. Shove that control into a nosedive, Hulk Hogan. Push yourself to total self-destruction as you realize, Hulk Hogan, you are about to enter a world close to parts unknown. Smell it, warriors. Do you, Hulk Hogan, look for a place to hide? Or do you, Hulk Hogan, face the challenge that may be more powerful than even you are, Hulk Hogan? You, Hulk Hogan, must self-destruct so that you will know, Hulk Hogan, who is the chosen one. For Hulk Hogan, I am not the chosen one that you speak of. I am not. I, Hulk Hogan, am the only one.
All right, and we're back right now, and joining me is my lovely, amazing, beautiful fiance, Abby. How are you, Abby?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. How was that for an intro?
It was good.
Was that enough, or should I have gone on longer?
No, that's good. You don't need to brag about me too much.
Okay, all right, well, good. Well, the reason why Abby's with us today is she's going to give us kind of the female perspective on what she's seen on the network, because one of the prerequisites for marrying me, of course, is she had to become a fan of wrestling. So I guess real quick, before we get into that, though, do you remember kind of the first foray into wrestling that you had? I mean, what was your experience before me? How were you familiar with wrestling before I came along?
Well, I was a secret wrestling fan. I had to be, because during the time when I would have been old enough to kind of comprehend the things that were going on for wrestling was during the Attitude era, which is obviously known for, WWE to be one of their more probably raunchier
Sure, yeah.
decades of wrestling.
And you were in grade school at the time.
And I was in grade school and used to watch it, and we used to be really into it because it was just so outrageous. But I wasn't allowed to watch it really because we had to watch it in secret in my basement, my dad's man cave, because my mom was one of those moms probably calling into Vince McMahon, telling him that it was a bunch of trash. But then I didn't really get into it until, we started dating on Valentine's Day, which is when we're actually getting married. But, Valentine's Day is the next time that I really got into it. And
what happened about this is Valentine's Day 2011 we're talking about.
Yes. It was The Rock's birthday.
No. It was The Rock. He returned.
Oh, The Rock returned. Okay.
This was the year, for anybody that's not familiar. This was the year when he kind of started his comeback. So he was going to be hosting WrestleMania this year, and then the next year he'd go on to face John Cena, and then again the next year, and so on and so forth. So moving on to, I basically made you watch some things on the network and everything like that.
I wouldn't say you made me watch this particular one because you were watching it, and then I happened to get kind of interested in the storyline. So
okay, well, why don't you tell everybody kind of what you were watching, and I'll ask you some questions just on a perspective from somebody who's not really a major fan. I mean, you're a fan of it, you like it, but I guess for me and a lot of other people out there who might be listening to this, I mean, we grew up with stuff that we've seen, and so like somebody experiencing this for the first time might be interesting to get their perspective. Not only that, but a female perspective as well. So,
Right.
so tell us what you saw.
Well, I watched the Monday Night War that was on the network, and it was just basically talking about the rivalry between WCW and WWE on Monday nights. And it was just a really, like I said, you were watching the last episode, and I just happened to be in the room, and I just got really interested in it because, you know, the rivalry is just kind of exciting in the backstory of it and seeing how WCW was trying to outdo WWE and vice versa. And it was just a really interesting kind of little documentary series.
Well, you kind of had an interesting or unique perspective on it too, because not only did you watch these, but you kind of binge watch them.
Yes.
So you saw me watching the episode. You kind of went back and
Yeah.
watched a number of those. So what was it like? I know it seems like just I've watched them week after week as they've come out. It seems like they cover sort of the same stuff. Did it get a little redundant after watching?
Yes, it did get a little redundant. This is definitely not a series that you would want to binge watch because in each episode they kind of repeat certain like facts. It definitely could have probably been a little like maybe a six-part series.
They've been dragging it out, I think, since July or something.
Yeah, I really believe they could have like did this in a 2 hour series, six little episodes. I think it just got really redundant by probably like the sixth or seventh episode. But I did like how they kind of did take and give each little piece of that era its own recognition.
Well, I think the redundancy comes in that we're trying to make it so it was, you could watch it. You could watch each individual episode on its own completely.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like necessarily a continuation or anything. You could start with any of those episodes
Right.
and kind of figure out what's going on.
Well, and then, I did end up right after we watched the last episode, which was kind of like the final, like what happened and how, WCW kind of came to an end and how WWE really started getting higher in the ratings. And then I was like, oh, well, let's watch D-Generation X, because I really like like I said, that's kind of who I grew up with, with Triple H and the Heartbreak Kid and Chyna, so I was really interested in that, and so I watched it, and then I went back to the very first episode, and it's like you could watch them in any order, and it doesn't really matter because they all each one kind of talks about the other one, if that makes sense. The other,
Yeah. Well, they were, it's kind of not like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, geez, what I compare it to? I mean, I guess there's those like long Ken Burns documentaries.
Yes.
Gets that reference.
Yeah.
Check them out on Netflix if you have Netflix. But those PBS documentaries
Yes.
that are long series, but they kind of go in order, so
Right.
you have to watch them. So, but this is a little different than that.
Right.
But I guess what about again? I lived through the Monday Night Wars, and I talked to you about how I used to have two TVs running.
Yeah.
I got a cable splitter, and I taped every Raw that was happening. Always, I always recorded every Raw on VHS, and they're sitting back at my dad's house, just collecting dust right now. But I watched Nitro. I was always a WWE guy,
Right.
but I had to see what was going on because I was a big, obviously a big Hogan fan and Randy Savage. So, the fact that those guys were still wrestling and sometimes wrestling each other,
Right.
or people like Roddy Piper, I had to see what was going on. So I had kind of my ATV, which is my big screen, and then the BTV, which was kind of a smaller screen, but I could see what was going on for both. And it was just, as they say, like all the wrestlers now, the current wrestlers, Ryback and Daniel Bryan and all those guys, they're talking about how exciting it was as fans because I was about their age at that time.
Right.
It really was. It was so amazing. You didn't really know what was going to happen. So I guess from your perspective, like, can you sort of see the difference between then and now?
Yeah, I can. It just was so different back then. Because WCW is where a lot of the I like to say the vintage wrestlers, like the ones that we are still classic, like that we know, like Hogan and, Bret Hart and, Ric Flair. And I could go on and on. The list is so huge. Like they thought they could get a fresh start at WCW, and like Macho Man. That's another one. Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth even went over there. It's just kind of like they took all the oldies and tried to make them into new, like try to have a new persona or a fresh like start, but really they were really doing all the same thing at WCW. They just had a different costume and they maybe went by a different name. So, and then WWE, they were still forming those characters and they were still going with the storyline. And WCW, with the NWO, like they just it was just havoc. They just were bullies, If you weren't in NWO, you weren't going to get a match, and you weren't going to win, and you weren't going to be.
Are you talking about? Are you saying from? Because again, you're just saying this from what you saw on the thing. So,
Yes.
Are you saying in on camera or behind the scenes?
I'm both.
Okay.
Both.
Okay.
Because for example, when they talked about Hogan and when he was going to be the third member of the NWO, he was known, and I mean I even know this from I didn't watch wrestling a whole lot, but I knew the main players and I knew that they were like the good guys. So here's Hulk Hogan, who was this guy who used to tell you to eat your Wheaties and work out and be positive and wear your seatbelt, and and he was in Rocky and he was in a couple TV shows. He was in Mr. Nanny. So
we also watched on one of our first dates too.
So he was just this like. He was a household name, and then him just changing, and he became a heel. But then when he would wrestle, it was the same old, putting his hands on his ears, and he still came out to the same music. It wasn't.
Well, his music was different. Are you saying that Are you saying he didn't really change the style of what he did?
Right.
Well, he was like a bad guy now, so he would do it. I guess what you're saying is that maybe are you saying he didn't implement any new moves?
Yeah,
and things like that, or like he didn't evolve.
He didn't really evolve his character. He just was a jerk. And from learning about learning more about the background of it as well, it just seemed like they just kind of took creative control, and whatever they said kind of went. And I don't know much about that because, obviously I wasn't there and nobody was there, and this is all,
right.
accounts. So it could have been totally different. But, like even Ric Flair, they really screwed Ric Flair. And I have to say, from being such a short fan of wrestling, Ric Flair is a really good wrestler, even for his age. I mean, he was doing it for what? Like till he was, 50 something, or maybe even his 60s when he finally.
Yeah, like his 60s. Yeah, he's still. Yeah, because and he'd argue that he could still go today.
Oh, and yeah, I mean, could he? I don't know, but I mean, he was not only was he a good wrestler, but he was a really good entertainer. I mean, he was just coming out with the costumes, he just was really good, and I just feel bad that like he got kind of screwed over, and it's just too bad.
So you said, you after kind of binge watching this, it's all kind of a lot to take in, but was there something that you found like particularly interesting? What was the most interesting thing you found about that you didn't know, or, maybe was surprising to you?
I guess I was really surprised in the very first episode when they kind of talked about how this all got started. When I didn't know that Ted Turner, McMahon actually had airtime with Ted Turner.
Yes.
I did not know that. And I always thought the two always were split. Or my understanding of going to FanFest and hearing everybody talk about that was just my understanding of it. So that was really interesting.
Well, do you want to know more about that?
Yeah, can I just say one more thing?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. And then the other thing that was just overall entertaining is I just got to see how the one outdid the other, And then I also didn't know that Raw around that time was taped in advance. I did not know that. I thought it was always live. So that was interesting to see, and kind of seeing how WCW kind of, screwed them by telling them what was already going to happen. So, that was kind of a jerk move, but, you got to do what you got to do to get ratings. So.
Well, who do you think was a bigger asshole at the time? Was it Eric Bischoff or Vince McMahon?
Eric Bischoff. And this is why I'm going to say this. I don't know, Vince McMahon personally. I don't know him personally, but just from everything, seeing him in interviews and just seeing him, not all, on in the ring or and everything, I just feel like Vince McMahon really does love this business. He's smart. He makes, and people are probably gonna rag on me for saying this because I know a lot of people don't like Vince McMahon, but Vince McMahon really does care about the sport, and he is the everyday man, and he does put on a show for the everyday man and woman, like the middle, the middle class people. He doesn't do it just for money. Eric Bischoff, I think things got to his head and things just became about money for him and winning. And it didn't become about the sports, because I think a lot of business moves that he did, it just was in poor taste of him. And I think he made some really stupid moves, and I think he just didn't do it for the right reasons.
Fair enough. Was there anything you have any questions on that I might be able to clear up for you? Anything that you were like, I didn't quite get that, or how did this happen, or something?
Oh man, you put me on the spot there.
Yeah.
I'd have to watch it. I know there's a couple questions I had while we were watching it that you kind of explained to me. I guess I just don't understand about like the whole the contract thing. Like, how did that, what was the difference between the contracts, I guess is what I want to say.
Okay, this is, I was not there, obviously. This is my understanding from just seeing interviews and everything else and the like. But with WCW, they were pretty much, I guess, as you saw, Eric Bischoff was given carte blanche to kind of, play with the money and everything else. Where did Ted
Turner get all this money from? I mean, it's crazy.
Well, Ted Turner, owned CNN.
Yeah, I know that. But that's just crazy that he was able to spend that. That's where I'm saying that this money, it became money, and it just became about winning. It doesn't become about the sport.
Well, and I think that that's one of the general themes that they go about talking about in the show is that Eric Bischoff or WCW wanted to put WWE out of business. WWE just wanted to get better.
Right.
Which that's it's funny that WWE ended up putting WCW out of business. But to go back to what your question was about the contracts, I mean, they would get guaranteed contracts where they were guaranteed, like it used to be with wrestling. Like if you didn't wrestle, you didn't get paid, or if business was down, you weren't getting paid as much, right?
Right.
So when these guys got guaranteed contracts, it didn't matter how many tickets were sold. It didn't matter how many pay-per-views they sold. It didn't matter how much merchandise was sold. They got that in their contract, and like I said too before, I told you that even when WCW went out of business, those contracts were still valid. So, there were people that were sitting home that were guaranteed these millions of dollars and just collected from sitting home because the company went out of business, but they were guaranteed that money.
Right.
So, if you're a wrestler, would you, a lot of people tried to stay loyal and did stay loyal to Vince. Like, there's guys like, The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels who were probably, I mean, who knows? I mean, and again, I wasn't there, I don't know, but had to be made offers from WCW at some point.
Right.
Bret Hart even famously on his Wrestling with Shadows,
which is a really good documentary,
which I also made you watch, but it was.
I would not say that you made me watch them. I am interested in this stuff, just to let everybody know out there.
Well, it doesn't make me seem like a bad fiance or husband or whatever. But
I think it just makes me look like a better fiance because I willingly like to watch this stuff.
Well, absolutely, and I'm lucky. I'm lucky for that. But they offered Bret Hart such and such an amount, and he didn't want to leave because he was loyal to Vince. And then Vince told him, "I can't afford. If they're offering you that money, take it."
Right.
So if you're a wrestler and you're guaranteed a contract like that, where you're going to get X amount of million maybe per year. Would you and you're working less? WCW would work a lot less too than they did in WWE. So I mean, it was financially a no-brainer decision for a lot of them. Even though a lot of them, I'm sure a lot of them maybe would have preferred to stay loyal or stay with WWE because, as we've heard, and they didn't really touch on this as much in the Monday Night War documentary series, but the backstage area for WCW was just riddled with chaos, it seems like, and just
and too, like you said right there, if they were offered from WCW and they were working with WWE at the time, Vince just said, just go. I can't offer that to you. I mean, that right there just shows me that, Eric Bischoff was just doing things for the ratings they both were doing things for the rating, but it was more about winning to him than Vince, because Vince lost a lot of his top players, but at the same time Vince was trying to continue building a brand, and he was just trying to bring in new faces, and that's all what the WWE is about, and that's something that I'm really interested in, is that they always try to give people, a fresh start, and they always try to bring up new talent, and some of the new talent isn't as great as what it should be, like Believe. It just didn't,
Bo Dallas.
Bo Dallas,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
Believe. That whole movement didn't work out so well. But still, the point is that he's still trying to, make his brand bigger and better all the time. And I know they kind of talked about a lot that people didn't really like. WCW wanted it to be the real people, like Razor Ramon. They used his real name.
Yeah.
It wasn't he wasn't Razor Ramon anymore. And WWE, they still use the characters. But I have to tell you, the characters are what really capture. But I am a little biased because I'm WWE, because that's when I started liking it, and I didn't get to see WCW as much. But like WWE, that's what really captures it is, not only are they throwing people and they're wrestling and, they're being athletes, but they also have to act too. They have to be this person. And I think that stuff is really interesting. I mean, look at Mick Foley. He had 3 different personas and he did them fantastically, all 3. I mean, Mankind was just so believable. You would have really, I believe that Miz even said this, that you would really truly believe that this man was probably schizophrenic, like outside of WWE.
Yeah. And well, I think it's about the and that's what a lot of people, I guess, complain about today, is there's a lack of. I mean, we're looking right now. Thanks to you, also, as a Christmas gift, I got the a Roku from my office here, and so now I can stream the WWE Network here 24/7 completely. And so right now Roddy Piper's on, and he just won the Intercontinental title from the Mountie. This is a good example here where Roddy Piper is a guy who is a character, and getting to spend the whole day with him, as I did, and you got to spend a little time with him. I mean, he is that guy, really. And that's they're. And versus where I think what they're talking about is those other characters like the Mountie there, where they said like everybody was an occupation. There was a cop, there was a guy who was a trash man, and there's all the
IRS man.
Who is Bo Dallas's dad? Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
I think I told you that once, and but that's the difference, I think, and I guess for
and
your
Bray Wyatt's.
And Bray Wyatt, yes, exactly. And I guess, what do you think is the one thing that you would have, like, looking back at the Monday Night War era and everything else, what do you think is missing from today that was popular then that could really help out today's, I guess, product?
Wow, that's a really tough question.
I guess I can ask it another way. Why was it more exciting back then, do you think?
The rivalry. Everybody loves to see a rivalry. I mean, that's why you watch people who get into football. That's why people get into baseball. That's why people watch sports. I mean, there is that rivalry. I do think, and that's what really helped, because everybody wanted. There were people who went back and forth like you did. They had to have the double TVs, and they had to watch, or they would flip back and forth. There isn't that rivalry anymore, but, the WWE does do a good job with kind of rotating their rivalries amongst, the wrestlers and the different wrestlers. I think, unfortunately, the talent today, like, they have some really good top players. There just isn't that much talent. I guess, like, for example, when we watched Stardust and Goldust wrestled, what is the New
Day?
The New Day now. When we went to Raw in Detroit. I mean, that was the boringest. That was the worst one of the whole night. And the New Day is a brand new New Day is a brand new, like, wrestling group, tag team kind of group. It was awful. And I was really disappointed because Biggie Langston is a really good talent, and Kofi Kingston has some really good talent too. He's kind of their like C-list player. It just wasn't very good.
Well, that was the one match, and sometimes there were matches in the Attitude Era that weren't good.
There were some other matches though. I mean, the thing that really saved them was Chris Jericho was there that night, and then Brock Lesnar made a surprise appearance and kind of took out Chris Jericho. I think the thing is they just need to get some. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Do you think it's well? I guess what I'm asking you is do you think that it's because of the fact that there aren't two big companies?
Could be.
Because like if you looked at the ratings now, and I'm not really big on the ratings and stuff these days, but I think it might be somewhere between a 3.5 and a 4 rating, where that's just with one show. But back then in the Attitude Era, you saw like both shows would be at a 5 rating, so that means that there's basically a 10 rating between the two shows watching wrestling, where now it's less than half of that.
Yeah, it could be. I think what I wanted to say is maybe not so much the talent, but I think maybe just sometimes there just isn't like a lot of wow factor to it. Like the Attitude Era, you were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Because you had, Road Dogg and, oh gosh, I can't think of what are the partners.
Billy Gunn.
Billy Gunn. And then you had the D-Generation X, and like you didn't know who was going to do what. It was just crazy all the time, There really isn't that like much of a wow factor anymore, and I think too, man, the last Daredevil type stuff that we saw was at TLC just recently with Bray Wyatt and
Dean Ambrose.
Dean Ambrose.
But that unfortunately, as you saw, we were watching one of the TLC, or they showed some of the TLC matches, like the early ones, where Bubba Dudley was getting hit over the head with a chair like a couple times in a row. Like I said, they would never let that happen. I mean, they don't let them get hit in the head anymore like that. And that's the thing, is it evolves, and like the way the NFL's evolved with all these different rules. But what I was going to say was, to what you just said, because I can tell you for a fact, I mean, it was like, the next day, it was always like at school, like I'd be talking, especially with one girl who was by my locker. Her name was Alicia Cannon. If you're out there listening to this or something, she'd probably remember it. We talked, she was a big Stone Cold fan. Not only her, but like all the people would be, and I was known as the kid who liked wrestling too. So before, I'd always have to be kind of in a closet about it, or I would talk about it, but all of a sudden it was the cool thing, and everybody on Tuesday mornings, we'd all be talking about, did you see Austin with the beer truck, or did you see him drive that
there's
thing?
Just not that much, and I understand that the reason that they do that now is because of family ratings and everything, but I'm telling you, there was probably way worse stuff on television now than wrestling, and I understand that it's got to be that way, but I think a little bit is the rivalry, and a little bit of it is just the wow factor.
So it's not edgy enough.
It's not edgy anymore, and I think that's what made wrestling so, like, when I started watching it when I was that age, when I was in school, watching it in the basement with my dad, it was just like what they said on, the Monday Night War, is people would call in, but yet their ratings would be so huge because they wanted to see what happened
people would
next.
Be complaining,
and it was just like, oh my gosh, like they set those ropes on fire and they're wrestling around the ropes. Like, what? That's so crazy. Or, oh my gosh, Sable took her clothes off. Like, oh my gosh, I got to see next week's. It's just like, that stuff, it just kept you on your seat. And there is ways that they can probably, I don't know, I'm not a writer, and I'm not an entertainment sports writer, and I'm not even a wrestler. But, there is probably some ways that they could do it. But honestly, the biggest wow factor that we've had in wrestling was when The Undertaker lost. People are still talking about that to this day, when he lost at, WrestleMania to Brock Lesnar.
Well, I think that, I want to make this very clear. I never we're going to talk bad about the product, really, because I watch it, and it is what it is. The problem is that I think a lot of people, say it isn't what it used to be and everything else, and for a lot of the reasons you're saying. But the fact is that I think we do live in a different world than we did then. So I think it's harder to shock people now than it was.
That could
And
be.
they may have even raised the bar so high. And plus, like, they're competing like everybody. Everybody talks about, well, it was better when they were competing with WCW, and it was, and I think that was a big part of it. But I think in what Vince said, even in his podcast with Stone Cold, is they see it now as they're competing with everything else on TV instead of just WCW,
Right.
which I guess there's some truth to that, and I guess at the same time, since it is a different genre completely, maybe they. I don't know. Who knows? Like, what it would be like if there was another organization like WCW around today. I think it would be different, and I think they would be.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that the stuff that's on today is bad, because I watch and I get into it and everything. It just could be, I don't know. It's just different. It is different. But you can't live in the past. You got to move forward, and and even the divas were different.
Yeah.
Today the divas are just, they're not, I mean, I hate saying this because I'm totally a woman and I watch Total Divas and all that stuff, and I do like to watch them, but does anybody else really watch the divas, man? I mean, it's just not as exciting, I guess.
I think that maybe it's a situation where they I don't know, the divas seem to have more distinct personalities then, and maybe that's because there was less of them.
Right.
But when you have people like Sunny and Sable, were two totally different characters. Marlena, if you put her in there, even Deborah. I mean, like, these people were kind of more memorable, and then the next generation, a little bit after that, like you have your Trish Stratuses and your Litas and
Yeah.
all that. So it is different, and it is one of those things where I I always wonder about, since everybody talks about that wrestling goes in cycles, what the next big thing will be. Can it get back to where it was in the '80s or even in the Attitude Era? So it's pretty interesting, but it's great that the network has these things again, like that you can watch now and sort of catch up and again, like, learn stuff about a different era.
Right.
It's great for me to watch, having lived through it, but then for people like you who are newer fans or even kids or whatever, to learn and
Right.
to keep some of these names like Val Venus alive or whatever. Now you know who that is. So
And plus, you can't, the Legends House for sure.
yeah, Legends House. We should talk about that another time. But yeah, I guess is there anything else you wanted to mention about the?
Man, I just miss China. She was bad. I mean, I don't want to cuss on your show, but she was a bad bitch. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm really sad that she did things like didn't work out for her like she did.
Yeah, well, I guess some people would make the argument that they did work out for her, and she did have a pretty good run. But I guess right now,
Yeah, I mean, like right now.
yeah, right now, I guess. But that's
China, if you hear this, get back to wrestling. Stop doing that other stuff that you're doing.
well, yeah, I guess. Well, hopefully, if she does hear this, she made a good interview. I guess too, it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
But well, anyway, honey, thank you so much for
You're
joining
welcome.
me, and
Thank you.
I guess next time, I think there's something else I'd like to have you watch and get your comments on.
Yeah, totally. And remember to check out on the website. I'm also writing a blog post for you. I'm married to wrestling. And right now I only have my one up about the Domino's sponsoring SummerSlam
Yes.
and the two Undertakers. But I will be providing some female insight. So for some of you out there that are listening to this and you want your women to get into wrestling like me, they can kind of read a woman's perspective, or even if you want to kind of read, it's always nice. So thank you so much for following.
Awesome plug.
Ah, no problem.
You're learning. This is good.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back.
All right, thank you.
So I want to tell everybody about our sponsor. It's WrestlingDVDnews.com. And you can visit WrestlingDVDnews.com for exclusive insider news and reviews on all the latest WWE DVDs and Blu-rays first. What's the next WWE DVD release on the horizon? Which should you buy and which should you avoid? How is the WWE Network changing the company's strategy on DVDs? Plus, get involved with their multiple giveaways each and every month for your chance to win WWE DVDs absolutely free. It's all happening now at WrestlingDVDnews.com. Okay, we're back, and talking to my fiance there about the Monday Night War. Looking back on it, the whole series. I mean, like we said, they've been kind of dragging it out since July, and it just ended last week. And for whatever anybody thinks about it, it is always the victors that sort of were able to write history, or rewrite history rather. But I think they did a good job of trying to get both sides of everything. Obviously they're gonna make WWE look great with everything and all that. But they did a good job. They got people. A lot of people tell the story, like how they got Shivani in there. And of course, these old Bischoff interviews, I guess, are still relevant. It's great that they have that. I wish there would be a little more from Ted Turner than the that one interview. Looks like they got off of VHS tape or whatever. But they did do a really good job of getting in both sides. So kudos to WWE and them putting all that together. And the other thing about it too is like it is a little redundant if you try to sit and binge watch it, but that's the cool thing is they did kind of go through it, and it's kind of cool if like I said, my fiance was able to sort of pick it up. And the one episode she kind of saw me watching, and was able to kind of understand, or at least have a lot of context of what was going on. So in that regard, it's kind of smart that they did that. But it definitely was a much more comprehensive, and they put out a DVD like a little bit over 10 years ago, I think, a Monday Night War DVD, and that was great and everything for its time. But like this, this definitely far exceeded that, and just the detail it went into, and again, a lot more stories and a lot more people that getting different perspectives and all that. So that was really cool to see, and again, just really highly recommended if you haven't checked it out yet. I don't know what you've been waiting for. You got to get it. You got to get on that, and definitely watch the Monday Night War. All of them were really good. I can't really say I have a favorite episode or anything like that. But the last one with the invasion stuff. I mean, what was really cool about that is that like I was actually there in attendance in Cleveland, like for the simulcast. So I was telling, I also got to tell, the story. I love, anybody who, sees that, and it's like, whoa, how crazy was that at the time? I mean, I remember just, all the stuff that they were talking about with, Bischoff wanting to buy WCW and all. I mean, that was 100% like true, and it seemed like it was a done deal, and it was made public knowledge that was happening. I mean, of course, obviously, like all the wrestling websites would have an inside track into that anyway. But I mean, it was definitely out there that Bischoff and that Fusion Media were gonna buy WCW. So I was like, okay, well, this is cool. What's going to happen now? And then the unthinkable happened. I remember logging onto WWF.com as I did on a daily basis probably back then. The site was much more simple, and I just remember seeing WWF purchases WCW. It was like a breaking news thing. It was they used to just have a little like splash sort of image that would come up. Again, the site was much more simple back in 2001, but I remember seeing that and just being like completely floored. Like, I mean, it was out of nowhere. And then to add to the excitement of that, like we had tickets for the next Raw. Like, what could possibly happen? And in fact, if you look, I was actually right in the front, and when Vince is kind of talking about, I'm wearing, I don't know if you can see me, but I got white sleeves on, a hat, and like the Triple H basketball jersey that was out. I don't know why I got the Triple H basketball jersey. I don't I don't know why. One, why I got it, or two, why I decided to wear it. But nevertheless, I was in the front, and it just was like so amazing to see that all play out, and then for it to be live. I mean, it was, when all said and done, I mean, everybody generally looks at the invasion, the whole WCW thing, as like a disappointment. I think there were just such high expectations. Like, it was like, we were expecting some WCW guys to show up on Raw. I remember, like, we were going to. I mean, they even kind of teased, like, because they didn't even know what they were going to really do yet. But I mean, we were looking for, geez, is so. I mean, is Ric Flair going to come out or whatever? I mean, we didn't know. And then again, to even add to all this excitement of everything going on, I mean, just to even make it more exciting, like WrestleMania was that coming weekend. It was right before WrestleMania, so what's going to happen there? And of course, as they showed on the Monday Night War episode, there, like, all they did was just have a couple of the WCW guys like Sean Stasiak and whoever, like, up in like a private box or something, and Shane pointed to them before his match. Is like, wow, okay, that's it, and but that WrestleMania, as soon as the gimmick battle royal happened, I mean, I kind of forgot about everything that I was unhappy about, and just seeing Bobby Heenan back on commentary was all I needed to make that one of the best WrestleManias ever. But anyway, what was cool about the whole Invasion thing too is that, like, the Invasion pay-per-view was actually in Cleveland, and we were in the front row for that as well. We just got a string of good luck, I guess, getting good seats at that time. And again, it was kind of disappointing, and knowing, obviously, knowing why, and looking back in hindsight, okay, because everybody's guaranteed contracts and all that, like, why they didn't jump to WWE earlier, but just think what would have happened if they would have had Goldberg, like, right away, if they would have had Flair. And oh geez, I mean, it took Sting 14 years to make it to WWE. So I mean, but we can only imagine what would happen if what would have happened if that went down like that way, and it was a true invasion. But it's those things, like, they did what they could with it. I do want to say there's a great piece of business that's out there. It's a guest booker series. It's from Kayfabe Commentaries. Go to kayfabecommentaries.com, and they have you could get a Jim Cornette like his version of like how he would have booked the invasion angle. And I gotta say, I mean, it's really, really interesting. And again, like, watching him sort of try to compute things and, like, look at the roster and how he would have made things work and everything, I think he had a lot of brilliant ideas in there. So that's really worth checking out. But that pretty much, that's one of those things where it's it maybe a lot of those things couldn't have really happened the way that maybe there's the reality, and everybody has their own fantasy booking and all that. But it's definitely interesting to see Cornette try to put it together, because he's got a great mind for everything, for the business and all that. But anyway, there's still hopefully more. I can't wait for them to add more Nitros to the network, because we love watching that. It's been great. We're watching the Nitros they have up, but I think we're ready for more. So I'd love to get more into the rest of '96, and then '97. Was like more of the NWO stuff. So hopefully that gets up sooner than later. But coming up, as I mentioned on the show on Tuesday at the end of our part 2 of our interview with Vince Russo, we have a very special guest coming up this coming Tuesday, and it's very timely. He's been in the news a lot this week. It's Lanny Poffo. It is, of course, the brother of 2015 WWE Hall of Fame inductee Macho Man Randy Savage, and it's just one of those things where it's definitely past its due. I mean, we all yeah, everybody's wanted Savage to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. It's just finally it's happening. You know, for whatever reason, you know, maybe it's they have nobody else or whatever. I don't know what the reason is. Because it should have happened back in, you know, when he was still alive. Too bad it's too bad it didn't happen. But you know, whoever's doing it, you know, word is it's Triple H has been, you know, putting together a lot of these deals with people like Warrior and Bruno Sammartino, who said they never come back to WWE. I mean, it's been amazing seeing all what happened, and you know, who knows where things would have been at with Warrior at this point a year later. But I mean, all the stuff that they've done, that they were able to do, at least to get the merchandising and, you know, the DVDs and stuff like that with him, was really cool. And have him, you know, at least show up on Raw again, you know, obviously like the day before he died. I mean, that was so crazy. But you know, you know, it's weird to think about, you know, what would happen with Randy, and had he, you know, still been alive, and you know what things would be like. I mean, again, he was just one of my favorites growing up. And he was such an interesting character, and he's one of those people, again, like that's why it's, you know, I think everybody was so pissed off that he wasn't inducted earlier, was because he's one of those people that was able to transcend the wrestling business and be somebody that, you know, be iconic, really be truly iconic, and be somebody that people, even who don't know anything about wrestling, they know who Macho Man Randy Savage is. There's only really a handful of people that you could say that about. And, you know, he was one of those guys, and that's why this is long overdue, but you know, it's really great. You know, couldn't be happier though, for you know, for Lanny. And this is a big, you know, in my opinion, I think this is a big thing, you know, for him. And there was a time, you know, which we'll talk about in our interview on Tuesday. But you know, he didn't, you know, he wasn't gonna. He was respecting Randy's wishes, you know, according to him, that, you know, Randy didn't want to go into the Hall of Fame without his dad and without his brother, without the family. You know, and you know, who knows? I mean, we don't know. You know, it's his brother, so you know, a lot of people. I know there's a lot of people when Lanny first said that were kind of like, "Oh, that's BS. He just wants to get to the Hall of Fame." But you know, I mean, like, you know, why would he do that? One, and two, you know, he's, um, he's his brother. It's his brother. I mean, he knows what kind of conversations we had. And the other thing is that, you know, Randy didn't do, you know, much, you know, much in the spotlight in the later years in his life. So, you know, that was one of the good things that, you know, recently, you know, Lanny and I talked about that, actually, the point in Randy's life too. We'll talk about that in the interview. But you know, it's one of those great things about the Macho Man, the Randy Savage story DVD, Blu-ray or whatever. That was one of the great things about that, is it got to fill in a lot of the gaps. You know, showed a lot of his charity work and things he was kind of up to. I mean, because pretty much after his rap album, I mean, he didn't really. I mean, he was relatively quiet, you know, for a number of years. So, you know, it was kind of cool to get a little bit of perspective on that. And you know, again, that's something else we'll talk about with Lanny, is his family's involvement with that project. And I really encourage anybody who hasn't seen it yet, just make sure, just for your own sake, get the Blu-ray. Go to our, you know, they're a great friend of ours, WWEDVDnews.com. Go to them. Check out, because they have everything on it. They have reviews, they have screenshots, they have all the different stuff. If you're curious about it and you're not sure, go there. They have the match listing on there, everything you get, like all the extras and everything else, that come with the package. But you know, go there, get the Blu-ray. If you're even not sure about that, they do have a preview, like on the network, so you can kind of, like, you know, look at that. And if you're not sold from watching that and the way that they start that out, then, you know, nothing's gonna hook you. But if you know, any fan of Randy Savage, you know, you gotta get this. It's the closest thing you're gonna get to a real, it really is a definitive sort of documentary. And you know, there's interviews again with Lanny and his mother. I mean, childhood friends and all that. So you really get, you know, the full spectrum. It's as comprehensive a piece as you can get. You know, and they do have an interview with Randy on there too. From the looks of it, in the mid '90s somewhere. So, who knows if there were other interviews that they could have dug out, like, that were kind of out of character or whatever, however you'd say that. But they, they did a great job of really putting this together, and it's well worth it. 100%. I can't recommend it enough. But that's all the time we have for this week. Again, we will see you on Tuesday with our interview with Lanny Poffo, the one and only genius. Thanks so much for joining us today. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. For more, visit the Network Nation at 999nation.com.